Alright, this one here is next. So let's create a new tab, create a new part. Make the part body the in-work object. Sketch on the YZ plane. I'll turn the grid on so I can see what I'm doing. I'll create a rectangle. I'll start it here, let's say. And we'll go 4x6. Oh well. Create another rectangle. Like so. And I'm going to use the quick trim command. There's two lines. One's the rectangle on the smaller one, and one is the bigger rectangle. So you got to quick trim them both to get rid of them. I'm just going to auto constrain this. I hope it shows up on the video clear enough. And I'm going to reference the bottom line, and the left line is my datums. I'm going to stack dimension this, and I'm going to take a quick look. This is fine. I could leave it like this, but one thing I knew I wanted was I wanted this flange and this flange to be the same. So I'm going to undo my constraints I created. I'm going to create this constraint here. The reason why I'm creating this one is because when I do auto constrain, it dimensions off the datums. So when you auto constrain, you gotta insert any constraints that are going to a point, or insert any constraints that are not going to the datum, and then auto constrain. See how this one doesn't come off this datum edge or this datum edge. So I manually create that, and I'll get a little different result when I auto constrain this. Use these as my datums. And you see this time, the constraints are created in such a manner that this and this will be able to be controlled, so I can make them always the same and let this be whatever the end result is of 6 minus the 2 flanges. Okay, so I created 2 rectangles and then did quick trim. I'm going to highlight this, delete that. I'm going to use profile. We'll do basically the same thing. I'll come up 4 inches, go over 1.5 inches, come down, let's go here, is that right? Here, it's the same concept here. I forgot to show you. Well, let's see what happens here. I'm going to go to auto constrain, reference these elements, stack dimension this. Okay, see, I get the exact same results. Again, if I undo, create the constraint that does not come from the datum, highlight this, auto constrain, reference these 2 lines, stack dimensions, select OK. See, in this case, I have these 2 dimensions that match. Now, I didn't like what it did here. Instead of giving me the overall width, sometimes it does that. It's not a big deal. Just delete it and put in a constraint and click the bottom line, and now you got what you want. You were going to put these all in manually before I showed you auto constraint anyway, so what's the big deal if you got to delete one and add one? Alright, but you do get a little different results whether I use the rectangle technique or if I use the profile technique. Alright, I'm going to show one other thing that, let's see if I can get it to work. if I use profile that the rectangle techniques won't do. I'm going to come over here like so again. Okay, so what I'm trying not to do is not, see that blue line shooting across? I'm going to try and click without that blue line there. And I'm going to try and click, and I don't want that blue line shooting across to the other side. So I try and select just off the grid, but where it'll still snap to the grid. I'm going to create this one constraint manually like we did last time. Highlight the whole thing and go to auto constraint. Reference this line and this line. Stack it. Oh shoot. It seems like now with the 3DExperience, where before this wasn't the same. This line here and this line here used to put in 2 dimensions. One for this side and one for this side because I was clicking trying not to create a link. But like I said, when you do auto constraints, what it's supposed to do first is look for all the geometrical constraints first. And it says, well, this line is in line with this line, so we're going to put on these coincident symbols and we're going to coincident those lines together so that this one dimension will control both. So in rectangles you wouldn't be able to do this, but if you wanted those to be different heights, what you would do is you have to create them different heights. Now when I create this constraint here, highlight this whole thing and auto constrain this. Select your datums, stack dimension. See, I got a dimension here and then a dimension here to control that height. And these could be linked up to be the same. Okay, so if I was trying to do that, I would use profile. Otherwise, I kind of like the rectangle because I like the way it auto constrains and I like just the way how easy it is for me to do it. So if I, if I have a rectangle here and another one here, like so, you can just go to quick trim, remove these 2 lines out, add the one constraint I know it won't do because this one does not come from the datum, highlight the rest, auto constrain, select the 2 lines as my datums, reference elements are datums, stack dimension, select OK. Finish it off by applying your anchors using the dialog box. Fix those down and remove your horizontal verticals. And now you have one dimension here that controls the height for both of the legs. If I change that to 3.5, they both change. And this dimension here, if I change that to 2, this one changes but this one didn't. But if I double click this, instead of typing in 2, I hit equals and click this one over here, double click that and hit equals in this pop-up box and then click on this one here. FX shows up and this goes gray, meaning that this is a formula linked to something else. So if I were to change this one to 1, they both change. Change this one to 1.5, they both change. I just linked the 2 together. Again, how I did that is I double clicked and I typed in equals, and then I picked whatever I want to equal, and that's how that's done. Alright, so make your part look like this one here. This I left over here to see they're both in line. Okay. So they're the same height, controlled by one dimension. All right, that concludes that one. One more to go.